Welcome to the Best Ever CRE Show, the world's longest running daily commercial real estate podcast. If you want real stories behind the good, the bad, and the worst ever deals, plus insights into what really goes on in the commercial real estate investing, you're in the right place. Our hosts interview commercial real estate experts every day to uncover secrets and strategies you can use to become a better, more informed investor. This is the Best Ever CRE Show.
Hey, what's going on, Best Ever listeners? This is your host, John Casman, and I want to welcome you to Multifamily Mastery. Listen, we've got a great show today. Let's bring on our guest, Mr. Trevor Schade. Trevor, how are you?
Thanks, John. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excellent, man. I'm excellent. Listen, let's jump right into it. Trevor, why don't you give our listeners a little bit about your background and take 2 minutes and let us know who you are.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on today. I grew up in what I think most people would relate to as a very, middle class type zone, and I was given the view and the vision of two different ways of operating in this world. Parents, I had divorced parents when I was about 3. One of them got a career and a job and progressed that way. One of them was entrepreneurial and went that way. And I got to see the pros and cons from a very young age. And I have the genetics apparently in me that I gravitated to that, I'll work 90 hours a week so I don't have to work 40 hours a week, entrepreneur style. And so I did go down that road and grew up in an auto mechanic family mostly. And so I learned that a customer can't hand you a car and you can't hand it back and say, I'm sorry, can't do it. And that have to find a way, make a way type thing. And did a lot of sports. I walked on the Nebraska Huskers football team when I was coming out of college or out of high school, and got to experience the training table and the workout programs and all that kind of stuff, and really got to experience how do you dig deeper and how do you push further and harder than you thought you could just by being around some of those teams and those people. And went into I started computer programming when I was in about 5th grade. And so I was this techie nerd, and it turned into, the gamer in the basement in high school that uses terms that thought they were normal. Like, I'm going to go to the layer. And hopefully some of your listeners can relate to some of this, because I know that is a stretch for some. And I thought that was normal talk, and turned into, the HTML 1990s programming. And that turned into about 13 other coding languages, and then workflow systems like Zapier and API Nation. And all of that turned into getting a Lean Six Sigma black belt certification. So for the listeners that haven't heard of this before, it's not martial arts, although I did do martial arts too. But the Lean Six Sigma, it's a way of making business operations or manufacturing efficient. So lean, you want to get rid of waste, have things run very smooth, very efficient. And so I have a lot of stories that I can help folks out and share some secrets of how did I make things run more efficient, more automated with less effort, time, and requirement of me. And then Six Sigma, that's very rare in my opinion on anything I've worked in anyway, because it's like when does a process, here's how it's supposed to work, when does that need to work more than 99% accuracy? For example, landing planes, that needs to be more than 99% accurate. That needs 6 sigma or 6 deviations. So that got me into consulting, and I decided to flip a house on the side. Did my first flip, came out. My real estate agent that helped me out, he made about $3,000 when he helped me buy it, $3,000 when he helped me sell it, and I made about $2,500 overall net numbers. And, it is what it is. But I didn't go backwards, right? The first one, I'd call it a success. And so from there, I called him up and I said, hey man, can I just get a real estate license and join your team? And I was still doing consulting and statistical analytics for folks and all that. And he said, yeah, just hop on board and I'll hook you up with the network and introduce you to folks and anything you want to flip or do, whatever. And I said, cool. At the time, I was also doing multi-level marketing. And so I was getting this very odd, unique ingestion of an analytical way of understanding human nature and interacting with people and sales. And so I started blending these two worlds, and a coworker heard I had a real estate license. I went into, I said, they said, can you show us a house? Can you help us buy a house? And I said, I don't know. Are you sure? Like, I'm not going to lie to you here. I don't know what I'm doing. And this could be a train wreck. Like, no, it'll be fun. And sure enough, that was back in 2014. And I helped them buy a house, and they moved in, and and from there, I leaned into, well, maybe I could take some internet leads and do some real estate on the side, because that was a decent paycheck for not a lot of time. And I didn't know how much time it was to drum up clients and all that. But so over the next 7 months, my first year in real estate, really, I sold 27 houses as an agent while diving into flips, while I had a full-time job. And it was
your first month?
My first 7 months. 7 months.
7 months. Oh.
Yeah.
I was about to say, good Lord.
No, not first month. No, first 7 months, 27 houses. And it was the, what is that? March through October type season. It was the busier season here in Nebraska. And that kicked off this career. And then I had the experience of the networking, and I had the experience of the, who do I call when I need something fixed? And that turned, and I didn't realize I was putting in 25% of the time that other agents were. And it was because of those systems and because of those, outsourcing either to machines and automations, or I started hiring assistants in the Philippines and India and all over the world, in fact. And so that was the beginning of the real estate journey. That kind of gets us caught up 30 years at least for a kickoff.
Yeah, Trevor, let me play some of that back, man. First of all, crazy backstory, right? You talked about growing up with divorced parents. One parent went the entrepreneurial route, one went more of that corporate WT. And you kind of ventured more towards that entrepreneurial side. Grew up in the auto mechanic world. From there, was always into computers, walked on at Nebraska, and really just dibbled and dabbled in a lot of different things, right? You mentioned just computer programming and Six Sigma and all these different things, which ultimately led you into real estate, being a real estate agent when you did your first flip project. And I think the thing that jumps out to me immediately is, I say dibble and dabble, but what I'm really talking about is you have a diverse range of experiences that allow you to take something you learn from this world, something you learn from this world, and apply it in a way that most of us don't see. And we talk a lot about, where you're at on your journey as a multifamily investor. And a lot of times people are more linear, right? You go to school, you had one job, or you followed a certain career, but maybe you didn't have these various and different experiences. So you can only rely on what you learned as an accountant or what you learned from me as a marketer. So when you have these different experiences, right? You mentioned multi-level marketing, all these other things, right? Where you kind of force yourself to figure out like, all right, I have no idea how this world works, but how do I make $1 out of this? And how do I do it in a systematic way? How do I create value for other people? Can you just talk about maybe some of the benefits you have? And the thing that I want to hit on is you mentioned that you were doing about 25% of the work that other agents do. Yeah. At what point did you realize that? And as you reflect back, what are some of the systems and processes and things that you put in place that allowed you to be more efficient and more effective? Yeah,
definitely. Okay. So I've been able to do all of that in a very short span of life because of how efficient I was doing it. I think what I've now worked with a lot of folks and doing now business consulting and operations consulting and all of that, I think what most people really value, once they get the panic money stabilized or figured out a little bit, now they want their time. And they need their time back. And so what I was able to do is I was able to spend some time with my kids that others weren't. I was able to redline in business. So from there, I started a real estate team. Once I started realizing these systems were not normal, quote unquote, for real estate worlds, because not a lot of programming tech people go into real estate agenting. Some, but usually it's a salesperson. And so I packaged it, and I learned I never ever wanted to automate something by a machine or outsource it to a person if I could eliminate it. And so I started practicing what I was taught to look at my processes, look at what I need. What am I actually trying to accomplish? And I'll take people through this exercise. And what's the true end main goal? And we will revisit that so many times over and over and over to make sure that we don't invent a whole bunch of new processes and work. when we should just start, test something out for 3 weeks, but make sure you give yourself a reminder to come back in 3 weeks and decide whether to eliminate that or not. And you cut the junk. And if there's something that is driving you nuts, that crazy dread before doing something, and then the crazy fall down after you do the thing, but the thing itself doesn't take very long. That is what I start to attack first with folks. And that's what I did in my own life. I heard the principle, the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, and that was 80-20. So 20% of your effort produces 80% of your results, or vice versa. 20% of your customers are producing 80% of your pain points. You can apply it all across the board. The problem I had with this principle is nowhere could I find, how do I identify which bucket all of this is supposed to go in? And honestly, at the beginning, I used irritation. If something irritated me, that is going to be in one of those 20%. It's producing 80% of my anguish. So fine, we need to eliminate it. And that was where I started. The other way of thinking that I came out and I figured out for myself was anything that could replicate me. That was part of the 20% that I needed to focus on and do more of, even if it was a pain and even if it was late nights. If I could all of a sudden replicate myself, now I didn't have to be the everything. So that led into starting the real estate team. And I thought, okay, if I build a team of folks that can go out there with nets in the water, and they now are going to have double their sales because of my systems, and I get to keep 10% of the commission, that's a huge win-win. They just blasted their income through the roof. They didn't mind parting with some of it in a lot of the flip consulting that I do now with folks, be it multifamily or single family or whatever. If I help somebody make $30,000 and they have to pay me $6,000, they don't care. They're up 24 grand by having me help, and they need me less on the next one. So it's this, that's the way I identify that 80-20 rule. And first I eliminate anything I can possibly eliminate. Then I mechanize or automate through machines or scripts. And one of the first things I teach people there is, if you're not a coder since 5th grade, I get it. So the first thing that you need to do is learn how to outsource automation programming. So you go find somebody that their standard of living is a third of what our costs are here in the US, and now you can afford them. Hire someone for $5, $10 an hour, put a cap on them for, a project of 10 hours. And now for the rest of your life, you have an entire system offloaded, outsourced. Your email inbox stays clear and you don't have all of that muck in there. Your follow-up with people that you don't know if they're actually clients and worth your time yet, you can just have texts from Google Voices go out to them, tons and tons. All of that can be built by someone. I even hired somebody, even having my background, I hired someone on Upwork.com, and I'm not paid by them. This is just genuine truth. There's no advantage here. I went to Upwork.com and I found a guy that I could export everybody from my CRM. I could click one button in a Google Sheet, and the Google Sheet extension, the Google app, or the programming VBA behind the scenes, that would change the entire sheet into exactly the format that needed to be in, so I could upload it into Constant Contact. And now I could have these two machines talk, and I never had to do export, shrink the column, split the name into first name, last name, because it's all combined in one. And I could have wrote the script, even knowing how. So I want to help everybody listening to know that if you don't know how, it doesn't matter. You can get somebody that knows how, and they can start that automation for you. You may just need some idea generation for what's possible.
Yeah, Trevor, you talked about really that 80-20 rule, and that being a huge way that you've made different decisions. And for you, identifying the right 20% or the wrong 20% was less technical and more so driven by pain point. If there was something you really dreaded doing, you said, how do I eliminate this, right? First thing was, can I eliminate this? If I can't eliminate it, if it's necessary, then how do I automate this, or how do I offload this so it can be outsourced or someone else can take this on? In their scripts, there's different tech you can use to incorporate that. many of our listeners do not have the technical background that you have since fifth grade. So yes, you'll be looking to tap into folks on Fiverr or Upwork or some of these other websites where you could tap into folks who have the expertise at a fraction of the cost, where they can create some of these systems and processes for you. Let me ask you this. So from listening to you talk, I get the sense that you are all about automations and you're probably big on AI and some of the other technology as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, that is one of my main focuses is deciphering, figuring out what's available and adding in the AI components so that I can take my automation to an even higher level. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's give everyone the kind of the full landscape. Today, what is your portfolio like? What is your team like? Give us kind of the range of what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I did is, I built a real estate team from 0 to 26 agents in about 5 years. Now, a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago, I did shut that company down and I helped everybody renegotiate their contracts. I had built it and it was profitable and it let me get on to a lot of platforms and buy a lot of real estate properties. I looked at, can I really run that business full remote? And I just couldn't see a way. So it wasn't the business that I wanted to run for the next 20 years. And so I did shut that business down. And that was a whole bunch of learning too. And how do you unravel that? And how do you make sure families and people are taken care of? And so that company I shut down, but it helped me acquire the first 10 single family rentals, long-term rentals. And in addition to that, I think I've done somewhere around, probably 30 different flip projects, be it 4 units and under type flips. And so once I had that stability and I looked at, I analyzed what grows at 23 and 26% appreciation rate, because a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage house, 1990 and newer in a high demand school district, not all things are considered equal. That appreciates way faster than many other homes, even more expensive homes or newer homes. I looked at that equilibrium crossing of how many people can afford it and what is the demand. And that pushes the price jump and price increase of those entry-level starter homes. So I thought, well, even if I bought something full retail, didn't quote unquote get a deal, 100% financed it in one way or another. Within 6 or 12 months, I already had 20% equity built into the thing. I could even be upside down in the long-term rental for a minute, knowing that it wasn't going to be for very long because I cherry picked the fast and high appreciating things. I compare this too to some folks, and a lot of your listeners are probably very real estate savvy and they're leaning in or they're getting their journey started. They're already kind of sold on the idea, but something that you can have in the back of your mind that really helped me. I'm a math person, so I broke down the math and I looked at, okay, let's take a look at investing into a mutual fund. And if someone's got a 401k at their work, if they're getting a match, well, I would call that a 100% ROI for the match component. I have a hard time arguing against that. And then even if you yank the money, pay the taxes and the penalty, it's still a 60% ROI. If someone came to me and didn't tell me what it was and they said, hey, I got a business deal for you and it's got a 60% ROI, worst case scenario, 100% ROI, best case scenario, do you want in? All day long. Those are great numbers, right? And then if someone says, okay, now on the growth of the product, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that you have to put money into it. And it is a negative monthly cash flow product. Does not produce you positive monthly cash flow. But the growth is like, 10%, 11%, 8, 9, somewhere in there. I'd listen, but I really started looking at that going, well, okay, so let's compare that to real estate. I can put in ultimately 0 of my own money. Maybe I have to loan it some money for 6 to 12 months and then I get to refi or take it back out. And I have 0 in and I can cherry pick 23 to 26% ROI. I'll put some money in the 401k and let that match happen because I dig that. And I get a positive monthly cash flow product for 23, 26% increase. And then even if my monthly cash flow on a real estate property has to be negative by $100 or $200 a month. It's no different than most investments that people are already tapping into. It's just not required most of the time. But it also let me open my mind to the possibilities of, well, if I can get a thing bought that grows like crazy and all I got to do is endure 12 months of minus 200 a month, that's $2,400 backwards and 30,000 forward. That was good math. So I leaned into some of those, and then I looked at flip properties, of course. And then I got to learn the difference in the appreciation of the multifamilies. And that really showed me how I could more control my appraisal values and my leverageability against it and my refinancing ability. For anybody listening that doesn't know this, it's anything 4 units and under. Most banks they'll look at comparable sales and they'll say, what did something around here sell for? Anything 5, or is it 6 units and above? It's based on the income. So it's, well, how much rent are you charging each month? Pull out some vacancy, pull out some expenses. What's left? Reverse those numbers by a capitalization rate. And so if you increase the money coming in per unit by $200 a unit times 50 units, you just took your appraisal through the roof, and you can now leverage it against more properties.
Yeah, Trevor, you talked about really starting out more when you got into the real estate side, focusing more on flips, expanding that to 10 long-term rentals. What else do you have in the portfolio right now?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. Let's see. I've got a 96 unit that I'm a 17% or 18% owner share in, a commercial property. That's got, I think I'm about 12% in that also. So that's like a commercial strip. The 96 units, I think that's all I'm holding right now. The others I've either flipped or sold or cashed out. Or one of the things that I've taught people for years, you got the pool of money, and then you got the money that's standing or held or stuck in a property, the down payment money and things like that. And I've always told people, never drain the pool of money. If you get that sucker to zero, you're on the sidelines watching. You got your hold properties, and that's great, but you're stuck. You're sitting there. So I would tell someone to always have a method of filling the pool of money and growing the pile of money, shelving parts of it in assets that appreciate like crazy. And then once you get some stability in those assets and in that long-term stability and plan and play, then I would tell someone, keep investing certainly in real estate, multifamily, commercial. I like a lot of that in those numbers. But entertain the idea of businesses that maybe operate out of the properties you own. And now you have cash flow businesses on top of appreciating real estate property. So that's what I'm doing right now is I am moving money from some of the real estate properties into the businesses because I feel like I've got my baseline in a decent place.
So Trevor, to recap, right? You've got the 10 rentals, you've done over 30 flips, you've got some equity in a 96 unit, about 18% equity or so in a 96 unit, you've got some other equity in another commercial property. And now you're starting to invest more in businesses as well because you're seeing the growth opportunity. And before you were starting to get into really just understanding like, hey, you can buy these properties, but you figured out, hey, certain properties appreciate faster than the rest of the market. So those are the properties you were locking into. I want to come back there because I think it's interesting, right? When we talk about, where to invest and what to look for and finding deals and opportunities, you mentioned that you could buy deals that actually aren't even cash flowing out of the gate, and typically we're always looking for cash flowing properties, but you're saying, hey, if you know exactly what kind of properties are in high demand, they're going to appreciate and they're going to appreciate faster than the rest of the market. Then you can kind of wait a little bit. You can wait a year, you can wait 2 years because you know that the demand itself will drive that appreciation. Can you give us a little more context of kind of what you seek and what you look for in those fast appreciating properties?
Yeah. I'll speak to that on a couple different layers because I think all of the listeners are probably at different places in their journeys. So I would go back to those 3 pieces again. I would go back to, are we growing the pile of money? Are we going to have appreciation work for us, or are we going to create massive cash flow? That is what I would tell someone, revisit that monthly. And then my answer would be different in each of those categories. So right now, I still love flips. I love single family flips. They're very systematizable. I mean, you can find 3 good handyman companies and you can handle 90% of what you need. There's only one property to oversee. You have 3 at once. You do 12 a year. I mean, it's something that is very rinse and repeat. I've got a bookkeeping company that's in India. I've got interacting and oversight teams in the Philippines, and they're on the Google Voice. I've got shared access and visibility into all of the email inboxes. And I can jump in or I can not jump in. I can go visit the property or I went to care.com. This is one of the craziest life hacks. I went to care.com. So for anybody that knows this, they're like, what? This has never been on the show. I know. Care.com is for hiring babysitters. Ultimately, there's a lot more on there, but I thought, what if I hired a nanny for me and somebody that's run really big houses and they hired the lawn care done and they hired the plumbing done. And what if I gave them access to my stuff and they could handle the messages from tenants? They don't need to do the real estate license required stuff, but all of a sudden they could take a bunch off and wait a second. Now they're billing me hourly. Could I also have them return my Amazon boxes? How about my dishes? How about running my errands? And all of a sudden, and could I have them drop a lockbox off at a house? I was really clear about what things I could and could not let them do. But all of a sudden, I kind of built in a property manager assistant into being a personal assistant, all for an affordable number. And it was somebody local because they just needed some side money off of care.com. And so that helped with some of that in-person stuff also. If I find a good deal, to continue answering your question, if I find a good deal that's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, like I was saying before, if I find that and it's one I can just pivot and acquire and let the appreciation rock, awesome. Again, it just doesn't take a lot of effort and time. It's all about the time. If it doesn't take a lot of my time, I'll do it. If I can partner up in a syndication property with a group of investors, syndication property being, multifamily 96 unit, 220 unit, something like that, or a commercial or medical center. And we're going to go and buy a $7.5 or $8 million building or $15 million building, whatever. And we need to do some fundraising and everybody gets to be on the LLC as a member. And so you're a true partial owner. You get some dividends. You have a plan for when you're going to refinance. You have a 10-year plan of when you're going to sell. All of that. I love those. I can just prove it to myself, know that I want in on this. And then it's easy to tell people about. And I can say, hey, well, you've been telling me what you're looking for and what you want. Here's an idea and an option. Do you want in? And I'll introduce you to the right folks. So I really like those opportunities as well. And then I'm really slow on the business buying, by the way.
As you should.
Those ones I'm real slow. I'm like, I know how to fudge P&Ls. So I know everybody else does too. Like, I'll move slow on those. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor, I think it's interesting too, right? You've got a pretty diverse portfolio there. And what I'm hearing you say is, you kind of understand what to look for in an opportunity, right? Yeah. So when it comes to the single family side, those 3-bed, 2-bath with the garage, those homes you really like. You mentioned the nanny, man. I'm sitting there just cracking up because I'm picturing that nanny is like, where's the kid? Like where's this kid that you were talking about, right? You hired a nanny for yourself to take care of some of these tasks. And really built in kind of a quasi property manager assistant, right, to help you out there. But really innovative. One of the things that I'm taking away from you is your mind just works different. You're very creative, a bit innovative when it comes to looking at problems or looking at a situation and maybe thinking things that others miss or they don't even think of. And that allows you to, kind of be innovative and come with some creativity and find solutions that may feel abnormal or maybe unconventional, but it allows you to solve a problem. I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier, though, because, when you were talking about systems and technology and AI, I want to bring that here. So you've got your portfolio. How do you leverage technology to manage your portfolio and to grow it and to scale it and to evaluate opportunities? So talk to us about how you're incorporating that in your business today.
Yeah, definitely. I spent a lot of time living and breathing in Zapier initially. Zapier, I hear both.
I say Zapier too. I have no idea.
Zapier. I'm like, it's a Zap.
Isn't it weird that there's all these companies that exist and like we've never heard anyone say the names, so we don't really know how to pronounce it properly?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And then all around the world, well, there's a lot of different pronunciations of even English, and so I'm like, well, I don't think it's a wrong. I think it's you pick and choose, like whatever. So anyway, I lived and breathed in Zapier for a long time, and I started learning. Okay, if a certain email came in, I could kick it over into one of Zapier's partner systems, like Mail Parser, and I could say, all right, read the body of the email. And when you find this sentence, when you find this wording, that's when it says name, colon, and a new line, the next word, the first word, that's going to be the start of the name. And up until the end of the line, that's the end of the first and last name. Now find the space. The closest space to the end, that's the break between first name or middle name or whatever, because it could be Mary Lou. Well, I wanted that programmed right. And so now as I could do that, I could dump it into data fields. And I would have that automatically feed to text messages, pump it into my my CRM. My CRM was synced with my Google account, and so that Google account was on my iPhone as well. And so as I was a new contact would come in, a new lead would come in, and I'd get pinged, and I'd get an email, and all of a sudden Zapier would kick that into all these workflow systems. And as I was typing them my first text message, and I had their number at the top, I would watch that number switch to a name all on its own because all these workflows were happening behind the scenes. And then anything I could think of from there, I started looking through Zapier and seeing, okay, what programs are in here? What can be done? What's possible? And I really prefer using WhatsApp and the group messages in WhatsApp for my business doings. But I had to weigh that because Slack allows you to integrate into, even if I wanted the team to hear, congratulations, Michael had a new sale, and just, pump up the team and that kind of stuff. Well, I could automate that fully in Slack. But then I had to pay for a paid service, and I had to get users paid for. And so I was like, well, what if I just pay somebody in the Philippines to get pinged with that? And their job was to copy and paste it over into WhatsApp. So I would experiment and compare what things can I fully automate with machines. And then when it came to emotional experience or relationship, I really was careful of, do I want to over automate this, or is that the important part that I do need either me or someone else with that right skill level to do? And I never over automated. I always made sure to keep track of what am I actually trying to accomplish here, and don't take it too far, and don't just automate for the sake of principle and automate for the sake of I'm on that path and blind running. I can't even, to this day, I learned this probably 15 years ago. I am not able to successfully set goals. Doesn't work for me. I set trajectories. I am too analytical. I'm too detailed. If I set a goal, I will run for 10 years blindly and destroy all other parts of my life achieving that goal. And I will. So I have to set trajectories, which come with, when are you going to look and decide if you like that trajectory anymore? And so I have to set myself a 4-month reminder to have a meeting with myself to decide trajectory. And I truly actually put this on my calendar. So then for that one goal, I can go, well, yeah, but I've sailed across the Atlantic for kind of a ways now. Are we still on track, or do we need to adjust course here? Don't end up in Antarctica,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand for you. You mentioned trajectories instead of goals, which is, we all have different approaches, and our minds work differently. So if that works for you,
totally.
I think what stands out is like there's some simplicity into the way you're approaching it, but also some complexity too, right? I mean, you're talking about setting up the Zapier connections where it's reading your messages and it can recognize names and it can get it into the system. And now you've got that in your database. And a lot of that is amazing because it just makes your life a lot easier. Mm-hmm. I know some of our listeners that feels like overkill. And you talked about that line between the human touch and the humanity with that interaction and that connection versus it feeling just automatic and robotic. Can you maybe step back and give us some context of, is that just how you approach everything with how do I automate it? Or are you really trying to solve hey, is there a better way to do this problem. Because what I'm trying to think through, like, in our business and for our listeners, most people automate when it's a pain point. It's like, I'm just tired of manually grabbing everybody's name and rolling it. Like, that's when they're looking at automation. And it sounds like you're almost looking at automation first, even before there's a real pain point or problem. You're kind of looking at the automation. So I'm trying to just understand more about how you view automation and also balancing the human touch in your business.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's a systematic process that I now subconsciously go through. So usually it's the pain point that starts the trigger. And that's when I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. And in a weekend, I'm going to finish this and fix it. And okay. So as I do that for enough years, all of a sudden now I notice, even before it's a pain point in all their companies, I notice, oh, well, I'm not going to even start this the wrong way. I'm just going to automate this out of the gate and from the get-go. So that's where I think those two tie together. Now, I know how nth degree and off the rails I can go and I can get. So after I put in that red line push and just burn the candle from both ends for a weekend or a week or 2 weeks, now I stop, I shake it off, I take a breath, and I kind of shut down the world for a minute and I go, okay, one of the hardest skills that I was taught 20 years ago is in multi-level marketing that most people do not have and do not practice and do not hone is being able to put themselves in the shoes of another person, being able to see the world or see a process or see an effect from how it feels to be on the other side of that. And so I really do shut down everything and I go, okay, now if I was the client, if I was receiving this, would I feel snubbed? And is that what I want? Because sometimes I'm okay. If it's like it's a rejection notice and they're out and I want them to get a little emotional, maybe I am creating an emotional experience on purpose, but I will measure that. And one of the pieces of Lean and Six Sigma that I was taught was you build in feedback loops. So make sure there is a really comfortable, easy way for someone to speak up and tell you this isn't comfy. Because even if I do this exercise to go, all right, do they feel like they are not important? Is there a way that I can keep it automated and keep them feeling valued? If there's not, do I need to no longer use the machine for this because it can't actually achieve what I want? It can achieve automation, but it's not what I want. Or do I need to have a person touch? And what skill set and hourly rate is that going to cost me? Or is it something that I just keep myself? Because can I even hire it out for a reasonable price? And I truly go through that step-by-step process. Not all at once. That's not in the same day. That's not in one sitting. That's do part of it, measure, do part of it, measure, turn back around and look at it and reflect, maybe throw the whole thing in the trash and go, well, that was a learning experience and that should not be automated because I just lost 15 clients in 2 weeks.
Lots of lessons to learn there. And obviously when you're scaling a business, that's part of the game, right? Is you got to experiment, you've got to reflect and try some things and see what works. And that's the game, right? You go through all those steps in the process. Where are you focused today? I've heard, lots of different, irons in the fire, if you will, but what's your priority today as we speak?
Yeah. My priority is to restabilize all of my time. Once again, when I shut that business down 2 years ago, that really kept me with a ton of expenses, and it no longer got commission checks or cuts or shares of any of that. I've leaned into the real estate. I've leveraged what I had. I was really intentional and thoughtful about which ones refill that pool and that pile of money, which ones keep me set and ongoing and upward in appreciation. And then as that got more stabilized and I was able to then take more risks, buying businesses that produce the monthly cash flow, that all at the same time. And I know that's half an answer to what you were saying, because how can I possibly be focused on all of that at once? It's because most of them run themselves. That's the difference. I'm able to run 3, 4, 5, 6 companies at a time because I really outsource everything I can to people that are excited and happy to be part of the team. In that 5 years that I ran that real estate team, 0 to 26 agents, we had 0 turnover. Nobody didn't renew their license. Nobody switched brokerages. Nobody switched teams. That is not a real steady Eddie industry. And we never had anyone leave. And that culture creation I apply to everything I'm doing, because I've learned that one of the most expensive things that I've ever had to do was train somebody. And if I have to train them again, how many years of expense did I just lose? So if that's the 80-20 rule, I'm like, don't mess this one up. So we use Gallup Strengths, and everybody has to take a Gallup Strengths test. My sister runs a Gallup Strengths consultation business in Dallas. We've talked about this for years, and I learned what everybody's strengths and gifts are, because I've learned we've all been in some class, some project, high school, college, something where it was midnight and we had already completed the project, but we were neurotic. We were all about it. We were gonna keep going, and we kept trucking until 2 or 3 in the morning because it was fun and energizing and inspiring. And I thought, well, what is that? And as I learned about Gallup Strengths, I thought, well, what if I can get everybody in their natural gifts and talents that nobody can compete with? They're actually terrible at teaching how they do it because they don't know. It's built in. And if I can just get everybody in right lanes and right positions to do that, why would they ever leave? Why would I ever have to retrain somebody? And I think that's a pretty huge part of why I'm able to then sprint and run down this automation space, stay in my own lane, get out of their way. I hire people that are better than me at what they're doing. And I think that's something I've seen go very, very wrong in many corporate arena situations, where somebody, because of their own self-worth or their own ego, they will hire somebody lower performing or less capable. And I'm like, that is reversed and opposite. If you can just get out of the way, hire people better than you at whatever they need to do, I mean, everybody's going to win. You don't have to replace people. You don't have to retrain, and they're inspired and they love what they do.
You talked about culture and retention, having all those 26 agents remain with you and not having any turnover. I think that's incredible. You mentioned Gallup Strengths being one of the ways you've identified some of these key competencies and key skill sets and traits that some of these people have. What are some of the elements of culture that you've been able to tap into to have such high retention and identify the right people for your businesses?
Yeah. So in that Gallup Strengths, we had everybody's Gallup Strengths, their top 5 strengths. We had them on the wall. And so I'd walk into the office and I would see, almost every day, somebody was standing in front of that wall, just studying it, comparing themselves to other people. And now, so for example, we had an agent on the team that his number one strength was competition. That is incredibly abrasive to anybody that doesn't know that that's what it is. And so now everybody could look up on there, and they were less judgy on him, and they weren't hard on him. And they were like, oh, I understand you. Well, that plays into the other side where everybody's like, I feel seen and heard, and I'm understood, and I belong. And that was what I accidentally did very right, is I created this belonging. I also accidentally took everybody when we had no money, man. We had $108,000 in credit card debt. We had no money in any of the 12 bank accounts. And I was like, hey, first year into the real estate team, you know what? You guys hung with me, and I think you would have hit your sales goals and your sales incentive goals if I would have had all the systems in place. So just to show you I appreciate you, I'm going to take you to all-inclusive trip in Mexico and take your airfare and your resort fee, and I'm covering it. I don't even to this day know how I did it. I don't know where the money came from. I don't know how we paid it was February of 2017. I'm like, I don't know how we paid March. We had no money. And so somehow we got through that. But what I watched was, because I wanted everybody to come to one dinner there, but the rest of it was just organic, and everybody, flow, do what you need to do. It's like, have fun, enjoy. These memories came out of it. We did a catamaran together, and all of a sudden this glue formed, because it wasn't some stuffy have-to trip of their job. It felt like, no, you're an equal here, and we're going to do this cool stuff together. You feel seen and heard. We talk about strengths. We don't just create these value propositions and never actually talk about them day to day to day to day. It was actually what we did, and we all talked about them, and we held each other accountable to them.
Yeah, a couple of things jump out. One, you talked about values, and I like to think of it as values aren't values until they cost you money, right? Because we all value great things, right? But until you're faced with the decision, like, oh, this is going to cause me to lose money. Well, that's how you know your real values, right? So right. I think that's great. And when you talk about financing that trip, whether or not it's the right thing to do is debatable, but financing that trip for your agents, because it was important for you to take care of them, to recognize them and show them what you were building and show them that you believed in them. I think that speaks volumes about, the way you approach it, as well as identifying what are their strengths. What are their strengths? Let's put it on the wall. Let's make sure everyone's aware, because it also allows them to bond and to build transparency with who they're dealing with. And now you're not maybe misinterpreting something that may come across as passive aggressive, when it's really just like, that's just how that person thinks. Their mind just works that way. But you've built up this story in your head that, oh, Johnny hates me. Did you see this email he wrote, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's just he's running, like his mind is just wired a little bit differently. So I think that's really cool when you talk about building culture, and something we have to be mindful of when we are looking to create that, especially when you've got multiple businesses and multiple industries, because they could be completely different, where the way this one over here operates is completely night and day from the way people think and operate over here. Different personalities, different business outcomes. So to understand how to build different businesses, systems, processes, certainly takes a different mindset. And that's one of the things that I think jumped out in our conversation today. Hey, as you think about what's next for you, you mentioned, taking the 2 years, selling the agent business, now kind of reprioritizing things, looking to get more into business acquisitions yourself. Like, what do you need on your journey? Like, where are the areas that you're looking at saying, you know what, we're going to have to get a little bit better here, get stronger here in order for us to have success over the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah. I think I would actually, my nature is not to think about or talk about or even figure out what I find joy in, what I find happiness in. It's like a byproduct. And I've been working for the last probably 5-10 years on keeping that as a metric, if you will. And so I think that's where I am, I'm headed, and what I'm doing next is, as I now have gotten most everything stabilized and I'm now leaning into the cash flowing businesses, now I'm starting to look at, what do I enjoy doing? And there's certainly a lot of leisure in there, and I love to travel and beaches. And, me and my sons are scuba certified and sailing certified. So sure, there's definitely water and boats on the horizon. But I love being on podcasts, and I love teaching, and I love being on stage, and I love helping. What I've learned in my Gallup strengths, I have in my number one slot, strategic amplified to the fifth. So there's amplifier strengths that if they're found behind certain strengths, they amplify them. I've never heard of amplified to the fifth strategic, so it explains a lot. But what that means is I actually enjoy and could not teach someone how to solve problems the way that I like to solve problems. I see and hear a problem, a situation, a grievance, a pain point, and in my mind, it looks like a Google map with about 15 different pathways forming up. And I'm just waiting to get enough information so I can start eliminating all of them, getting it down to the final two, and then asking the person, I need you to define best for me. And as soon as they do, I've got the pathway. And I can give it to them, explain it to them, and tell them. I can't tell them how I got there because I have no idea. But solving problems for other people in this kind of a format, or from a stage, or from a departmental guest speaker, or from a one-on-one or a group or a team or an executive coaching, anything along those lines, that's where I'm likely headed and going to lean into, because I actually just enjoy it. I charge for it, sure, but there's part of me that doesn't want to, because it's just enjoyable to me to connect with people that way and know that I have something that's different and unique and a strange lens that other people don't have, and I can use it to help them, and they can benefit and have life and business not be quite so hard for them.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about solving those problems and the connections, and it takes me to our best ever community, right? This is a great place to go and get connected with others, post your comments, questions, but it's all the same thing, right? We're trying to connect with folks who can help us solve our problems, and other people can see your problems differently than how you see them. So, and quite frankly, many people have seen your problem, overcame your problem. And that was, 5 years ago. So tapping into that audience and that network is definitely vital, and love that you're out there helping people. And you talked about the way your mind works. You can't necessarily tell them exactly how you got to the solution, but your mind just starts to go through the process and identifying different routes and starting to eliminate them and ultimately coming out with the best solution for them once you understand more about that particular challenge. So I want to talk a little bit more about multifamily, right? We've talked a lot about kind of the business and the mindset and the real estate agents. I want to bring back multifamily. I know you got the 96 unit. You mentioned you're in another commercial real estate project.
Yep.
As you were evaluating that 96 unit investment opportunity, walk us through kind of your mindset. What was your thought process and what did you like about that deal?
Yeah, definitely. I look at it the same way I looked at, when I did some 12 units and 16 units and 25, it really was about the same process and method, no matter how many units someone was looking at it, or I was looking at, as long as it was like 6 units or more. I look at, you hear this buzz term, and I'll define it because I have a hard time with the buzzwords and just selling out to them, but like the value add. Okay. So what does that actually mean? I like properties personally that I mentioned increasing rent $200 a month. Give me something that isn't brand new. I don't like the cost of new construction. There are some huge opportunities there. And I know that some people have cracked this and I've watched it and great. So I lean into, give me something 20 years old, 30 years old, somewhere in that zone, 15 if the money's and the numbers are right, where you got some pretty decent square footage. I like a good spread of 2 bedrooms in there. If I can get a few 3s or I can get a few studios, that's good. So I like that. In our market, if I can find something where something like that, just kind of has some white and black refrigerators and microwaves and dishwashers. They're not stainless. They got some just, linoleum laminate type style countertops. They got the terrible oak cabinetry in the kitchen, old carpet, things like that. I look at that and I go, that's aesthetics. You can make that really brand new, fresh paint, fresh new light fixtures. People can walk in and they can smell it, and they got that new smell to it. Can I make the hallways look good? And can I get that done for maybe $15,000 a unit? Less is better, of course. And can I then see in the market that, one, the market's growing, people are moving there, there's not a crazy amount of competition of where can people live, and then am I able to increase that rent $150, $250 a month for that unit, because now it's so much nicer and more comfortable and more peaceful for that person to live in, that they will gladly and happily pay for the nicer product. I really do try to find that balance between just increasing rent and being a businessman and putting myself in the shoes of the tenant that's walking in there going, they have kids crawling around on the floor and they want a nice space, or they're going to be in the kitchen an awful lot. And it sure would be nice if they weren't crushed between 2 counters, or, there were stains everywhere and somebody set a hot pan and melted part of the old countertop 30 years ago. So those are the multifamily looks that I lean into, is value add. And that's what I mean by the value add. On acquisition, I'll do a lot of negotiating with, inspections and walkthrough, and making sure the sewer systems are good and all right, and getting a credit if I need to before closing. And is there a lot of exterior work that needs done? Maybe it's an opportunity, but those are riskier opportunities for me. And if I'm in a season of being risk tolerant, I might lean into that. But if I'm not in a season of extreme risk tolerant, I'm not cash heavy in some other areas, I might just lean away from some of it needs 27 new decks, or, I'm like, maybe just a different opportunity is my opportunity at that time. And next year, maybe I would do that one. But I really just don't take any of the opportunities personal, and I stick to that type of litmus test, and I work the math. on, what can I buy it for, and what is the capitalization rate, and how much is coming in per unit? Is it a $750 a month 2-bedroom unit? And if it was $950, how many units? Do the math. What's it worth now? And I'm like, well, did I just jump the value by $300,000? Okay, but renovating the units, that's going to take a year and a half, because you can't just renovate them all at once. Am I actually making a good enough increase? And then if I really crush those numbers, did I make my 23, 26% that I know I can do in my sleep with a single family? it really needs to math out for me to jump in. And that's all it is, just a little bit of math.
Yeah, Trevor, I love it, man. I mean, when we talk about value add investing, you nailed it, right? It's identifying good opportunities today that you can be great opportunities, right? Finding ways to improve the value of an asset, recognizing the renovations that you can make, and how to increase the value, driving up that NOI, knowing that that has a major impact on the value of the property. A couple of big takeaways, man. First of all, appreciate your time today coming on Multifamily Mastery here on the Best Ever Real Estate Network, Best Ever CRE Network. And a couple of things. One is definitely understanding just the systems and processes. You know, if you can eliminate something, do that. If you can't eliminate it, figure out that 80-20 rule. How do you take that and outsource it, create scripts or programs, leverage AI, leverage technology, leverage someone overseas, but figure out a way to simplify that task so it's no longer on your plate and it actually enhances the business, but also about building culture. You talked about stepping back and understanding who works for you, who are the people you want to have work for you. And I wrote this down too. You talked about really just, the hiring process. That's one of the major expenses, right? Is training someone. Yeah. So if you get someone on your team, you want to retain that person. You got to understand who they are, put them in the right position to be successful, but also make sure you create an environment where they want to stay. So really great tips, some actionable and practical things that we can employ in our business today. I just want to thank you again for coming on Multifamily Mastery and being an awesome guest. For all of our best ever listeners, where can they connect with you to learn more?
Yeah, my website, www.trevorschade.com. That's it. TrevorSchade.com. I've got it spelled a couple ways. It'll forward if somebody misspells my name. It's all good. But yeah, I've got I have 3 different businesses on there where someone can connect in speaking opportunities or consulting or real estate in general. It's all on there.
Trevor, great having you on. We'll make sure to put a link to that in the show notes. Hey, best ever listeners, thanks for checking out this conversation right here on Best Ever CRE. If you enjoyed this, do me one little favor, leave that 5-star rating and review. And don't forget to share this episode with someone else you might find value of it. All right. Thanks again for being a guest today. We look forward to staying in touch with you. And I hope you all have a great one. Take care.